Continuing to move forward, we've been talking a lot about getting started in that, in terms of church planting. Last time we spent quite a bit of time talking about things like location and other types of things in the actual getting started in the church planting process. Today we're going to be spending some time talking about a couple of different things. One is the opening service, and we'll be looking at that. That's lesson number 13. And then lesson 14 today we'll also be doing, which has to do with really kind of making sure that we capitalize on the people that God is sending to us as we build His church. Now, one of the things that we're going to learn today, of course, and we've been learning this all along, is that whether or not you planted your church a long time ago, whether your church is going a long time or not, sometimes we realize, you know what, we could have done that different, or we could have done that different, or we can do that different now. We don't always have to just kind of go back and start all over again. We could say, you know what, maybe we should start thinking about some of this stuff for where we are right now. The other thing that's going to happen today is that I am going to be sharing some things with you and says, you know, I wish we could do that. I wish we could do that. I wish we could do that. Because we'll be talking about equipment that we need in our churches. We'll be talking about different things that we can do to get people to come to our church and different stuff like that. And you might say, you know, I wish I had that. I wish I could do that. I wish I could do the other thing. And again, everybody's situation is a little different. And sometimes the context in which your church exists has maybe more limited resources than another context, or maybe not. And you might be saying, well, I wish we could do that, I wish we could do that. Well, the thing about it is I'm going to be sharing with you some ideas, some principles, some thoughts. And then what you've got to do is allow the Holy Spirit to contextualize that. You've got to allow the Holy Spirit to say, okay, how does that work where I live? How does that work where I'm pastoring? How does that work in my culture? Because even these courses are going all around the world, and who knows who might be, whether they're in India or Pakistan or some other place where we know we have many people who are taking these courses. They might say, well, that works, that's fine for that, but not for that. Well, I'm encouraging you to go ahead and pick and choose what does apply to you. But then the other side of it is, don't just rule it out just because it sounds like, well, I don't know if we could really do that or not. Because I find that there are ways that we can be creative. And that's what we're required to do when we don't maybe have enough finances or resources. We have to be more creative than maybe other people. How can we accomplish the same thing with what we do have available to us? And are we just kind of ruling ourselves out on this because we sort of think we don't have the resources for it? But really, I think we can kind of have whatever we decide to prioritize, and so we may have to prioritize some things a little bit differently. But we're talking about the opening service. Now, in the previous sessions, we've talked about building a team and getting people together and building a core group and so forth. And you may or may not have had a public service to this time. You might be just having a small group that meets in a home, and you're just kind of getting a team ready that you're going to be using for this official church plant. And so there will come a point in time where you will be having what is considered to be, as your church, your grand opening. When is your grand opening? You know, stores do this. They build their stores, and they stock their stores, and they get them ready, and then they have this big party, and they have a grand opening, and they encourage everybody to be coming. Now, I don't know how the stores work here particularly, but I know in the States, lots of times when a store has a grand opening, it's not actually the first time the doors have been open. Sometimes they'll actually open a few weeks ahead of their grand opening just to kind of iron out all the problems that they might experience, make sure all the employees are knowing what to do so that when they do have their grand opening, everybody's on the same page, everybody's flowing together, and all the systems work and everything works the way it's supposed to. I wouldn't recommend maybe having your grand opening service the first time you've ever tried out a microphone, or the first time you've ever tried this, or first time you've ever tried that, because lots of times you end up with more problems than you know what to do with, because you've never really tested the systems that you might be using, whether it's even water or something else. Sometimes you need to make sure that the systems are going to be working properly for whenever you do this main opening service. But let's just talk about, again, we're talking about church planting, so we're talking about starting. Sometimes we're talking about replanting our churches or restarting, and I think you can do a grand opening or opening service in that kind of a situation as well. But Roman numeral 1 there says the opening service should be promoted with various birth announcements. If you're starting a church, you need to have some birth announcements, just like when you have a child. You know, you have birth announcements. Maybe we had this baby or whatever, and or we're having this baby. And here's some of the things that could be included. Again, these are just simple suggestions, and you may be able to add more to this list, and you might say, well, I couldn't do that, but I could do that. I can't do that, but I could do that. And that's the whole idea, is just get a number of things on the table. But again, if you're going to create some excitement around that opening service, then you need to think that through a little bit and decide exactly how you're going to do that. Again, what you want is people. Obviously, you need people there, and so people are going to have to know about what you're doing, and one of the ways you help people to know about what you're doing is by getting the word out, and the way you get the word out is through various means that are available to you to get that word out. And so some of the things that can be used are flyers. And of course, flyers are used a lot in this country to get the word out for various things, and I think flyers don't have to be expensive to actually be effective. And so having some sort of a flyer campaign where people from your church or people from your core or just you and your wife go around and hand out flyers announcing this very first service, announcing the opening service. And there are some people who kind of like the idea of getting in on the ground level, and you can use various language, new church in town, or new, grand opening, church, and that, you can kind of highlight a few things that will be taking place there. So a flyer, radio spots, okay, maybe you can or can't do that. Bulletin board displays, there may be in the area that you're going to be holding your church, there might be places where they do have certain bulletin boards that you're allowed to legally put things on. Let me just say this about bulletin boards. You can utilize public bulletin boards that are available for communities, available in stores. Lots of times they have them there, and you're allowed to use them. The main thing is that whatever you put on a bulletin board, number one, make sure it's very tastefully done, it's attractive, and that it's kept up to date. And sometimes they get like they're so worn and ragged and so forth, they actually have an opposite effect, and it almost looks like somebody's been neglectful. And so refresh them every so often if you do use those kinds of things. Personal invitations, obviously you'll be people that you talk to, and anybody that's in your team that can talk to people, give them a personal invitation. I'd like to give you a personal invitation. Sometimes you can actually just have like a personal invitation card like you would to a baby shower or to some other kind of a thing where you make up some sort of a special invitation, make it look nice. You can actually make them yourself. And then write out a special invitation. The honor of your presence is invited here or invited there, and you can hand that to people and say, we'd like to invite you to our opening service. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have what are we going to do? And then invite people that way. Generate some excitement about that initial thing. You can use touch cards. We talked about touch cards before. Little cards that have the information of the church on it. And those things can be distributed by you, by other people in the church. News releases. Sometimes in many of the communities they have, like here in this community, they have the Four Ways Review, which is a local newspaper. It's not the same thing as a Star or some other large newspaper. And sometimes they're looking for things that are taking place in the community, and they'll have a little article on a new church in town or something, or the pastor, let's meet the pastor. And those things don't always cost a lot of money. Sometimes they don't cost anything, because some of those newspapers are always looking for a new piece of advice, especially when it's related to the particular area that you live in. And a lot of the little areas that are around, wherever you might be having a church, some of them do have these kinds of little newspapers. The other thing is to obviously give phone calls to any other previous contacts that you've made. Now, I didn't mention this too much, but during this whole process of thinking about starting a church, every time you have a conversation with somebody that they show the slightest interest in what you're doing, you should take their phone number, take their details, so that when the time comes to finally actually get the church started, you can call them the week ahead and say, you know what, we're starting on Sunday. We'd really enjoy if you could be there. We talked about it before. Remind them of your conversation, and then personally invite them to come. And so phone calls to all the previous context. And really you should try to put on kind of a media blitz the week before the opening service. So if you're going to do flyers, if you're going to do touch cards, if you're going to do even bulletin boards and things like that, try to get that really saturated the week before the service begins, so that people are reminded right at the very end there. So these are some of the things you can do to promote that first service that you're starting. Actually, all these things are things you can do continually to promote the church, but I'm just talking about kind of that first service where you're getting the thing going. You're going to want to do something special for that. Number two, the opening service should be a quality experience. It should be a quality experience. This is one of the reasons why I suggested that we be careful that we don't just start without everything kind of worked out, how we're going to do things, how we're going to handle everything, because it might not be as good a quality as we would like. First impressions. Remember, first impressions are so important. If somebody comes to that first service and it is terrible, and nothing seems to work right, and nothing seems to happen right, and the singing is bad, and the preaching is bad, and nobody's friendly, and nothing happens, I mean, well, they're not going to come back, because there's no reason for them to come back. They're not being paid to come back. They don't know anybody there probably, and so there's no real pull except for what they experience while they're there, and you want them to experience the presence of God. You want them to experience a warm environment. You want them to experience friendly people. You want them to experience something very positive, so that when they leave, they say, you know what, we need to come back. We need to come back. That's the whole idea, right? Not going to chase them away. And so what are some of the things that will contribute to that? Now, again, I realize in some cases you may not have very many people in your core. That is a core group of people that are starting this church. But whoever's in that core will be busy on that particular service, as well as all services for a long season while you're getting things going. And so some of the things you need to think about, and again, some of these things are totally dependent upon how many people you already have that have committed themselves to the start of this church, or whether it's just you and your wife. A lot of these things make a big difference. If it's just you and your wife, you're probably not starting an opening service like this anyway. You're probably just starting a small group until you can get kind of a core group developed. But this means you need to have some service attendants, whether it's door greeters or ushers or both. Maybe they all double as each other, but they're on duty early when people are coming so that they can help people. One of the things I do find, which is kind of interesting here in this church, I don't know if it's true in your churches, is that actually first-time visitors tend to come earlier than some of our normal people. And they don't know the systems, they don't know how the church works, and so sometimes they're the first ones here, and so we'll have poor visiting person sitting alone in the sanctuary here waiting for the service to start, you know. And so if you're not ready for them early before the service starts, then it's very likely they could be coming in and no one's there to greet them, no one's there to be friendly to them and talk to them. And when you do have people that you're using as service attendants, whether it's door greeters or ushers, just make sure that they're appropriately dressed. Remember, they should be dressed in a way that will not be offensive to anybody, and it will be a way which will be a model. And even if people normally dressed in a different way when they're on duty that way, I think they need to be dressed appropriately. They should wear a smile, of course, but that's not all. They should also wear clothes. They should wear a smile. They should have some sort of a bulletin, some sort of a piece of paper to hand them when they come. And again, it doesn't have to be a very complicated thing, but it should have something that people can look at, people can read, that has some information on it, that will help them to understand better what's going on that day, and also maybe what's going on in the next season of the church life, or maybe even a little bit about the church. Number 4, they should be well instructed as to location and facilities. So whatever you're using for your facilities for this first service, they need to know where the bathrooms are. They need to know where all of the various things are, so that when people ask, your people that are attending to the service know where these things are so that they can easily answer the questions that people might have. So, service attendance. Letter B, this means quality child care should be provided for infants and toddlers. Very few churches can start out with a full-blown children's program, but people who come to your church will still expect child care, especially for the very, very young ages, because when they come to your service, you want them to be able to focus on what is actually happening there. And so you may have to hire a childminder so that your own people can actually be in the service. But you need to make a plan for that so that infants and toddlers especially can have a place to be during the service that is safe and that can free the parents to be more involved in what's going on. Letter C, this means the worship team should be well practiced. Now again, I don't know what kind of a worship team you'll have right now. You may just have one singer. You may have one singer who plays the piano. They may not even play the piano. You may just have one singer who plays the guitar. They might even have a guitar. Maybe you're just singing acapulco, as somebody said. No, acapello. Who knows? But whoever's doing it should be well practiced. They should be really ready. They should have thought through what they're going to do. It shouldn't just come as he is so moved. She is so moved. I mean, there needs to be some preparation to make sure that, again, this is going to be a very, very positive experience. Whatever format is used to help people sing needs to be done with excellence as well. Now, some churches don't have anything for people to use to sing. Well, we're making a huge assumption that everybody knows what we're going to sing. Now, we could sing Hallelujah all day long, and that might be good, and then everybody knows the words. But if you're going to use songs that have words, then you need to make a means for people to know those words. Whether, again, it is printing out some copies of the words that are going to be needed, or whether you have an overhead projector, or whether you have PowerPoint, or whatever system is available to you, there needs to be some way for people who don't know the Lord, don't know you, don't know the songs you're going to be singing, to be able to sing along with you. There may be a few songs that won't be necessary for, but for the most part, you'll want to make sure that people, so that they can participate, so that they can sing. And you can't sing a song 15, 20 times just so people can learn it in that first service. So we're talking about the first service. As time goes on, you'll build up a number of songs that people are far more familiar with, but even then, you've got to be taking into account the people who are coming in who are uninformed, not Christians, they don't know. And so we got to make it as easy for them to engage in the worship process as possible. Songs should be simple and easy to sing. I think that kind of goes without saying. Some of the songs in the Christian world today are very, very complicated songs. And I think for the most part, if we can keep them as simple as possible, especially in the early days of a church, it's better because a lot of people won't know the background of a lot of songs. So that's important. Letter D, this means that the service should be well organized and easy to follow. Should be well organized and easy to follow. Sometimes, again, because we just kind of throw things together, everything is just kind of happening haphazardly, and nobody really knows what's going on at any given point in time. I know that we can get too structured, but I think in the early days of a church, you're going to have a little bit more structure because, again, you don't know anybody. You just can't necessarily open it up for testimonies on a opening service because you don't know who's there. You don't know what they're going to say. You don't know what they're going to do. And so you kind of need to have everything pretty well mapped out, and maybe you do have some testimonies that you have already previously screened or whatever, so that when everything happens, it's easy to follow, it's organized, it has a good feel about the whole thing. I think, again, when you go into a hospital, you go into certain places and you see a lot of disorder, disarray, you don't get an easy feeling like these people really know what they're doing, and you start saying, is this guy going to work on my brain? Is this guy going to work on this? And I think as pastors and leaders, we need to let the world know that we have something to offer. And so I think it's very important that we think through what we're doing. And I think if a person comes from the medical world, or he comes from the business world, or he comes from an unemployed, homeless situation. They should all come in with a sense of, you know what, we can follow the leaders here because they know where they're going. They know what they're doing. This is orderly. This is good. And rather than somebody coming in who maybe does operate in the business world and say, "Ooh, wow, this is such a disordered, disheveled, nobody seems to know what they're doing place. I'm going to trust my soul to these people." Well, I think you got to see it that way, that they're going to look at it very seriously. So I think it's important that we put on our best on that particular time. Letter E, this means that visitor information is distributed and information cards are gathered. You need to have some way to get information from those who are visiting. Not just in that service, obviously in any service that you have in the future, but especially in that service, because that's your first service, it's your opening service. You're going to have probably more visitors than you do regular people. And so you need to get information from those who have come so that you can follow up on it. We'll talk about that more later. Letter F, this means that there should be an uplifting message. This is not your chance to preach hellfire and damnation. This is not your chance to preach on commitment or preach on authority or preach on tithing. Remember, this is the people's first experience in your church. I think it needs to be very edifying, very uplifting messages that they'll go away feeling very encouraged in their spirit. Maybe talk about the love of God, how big God is or something. But focus on God, focus on His love for them, focus on those kind of things. Don't worry too much about preaching you're going to hell if you don't repent. You know, that's a little bit in your face for the very first time you talk to people. And yes, there's a place for that, but it's not when you're starting a church and you're opening your first service. Believe me, you won't have too many people back the next Sunday. And sometimes it's just the messages that we choose to speak, and whether or not that's what they really need to hear at that point. So be careful about that. And this whole idea of commitment or authority or preaching the man of God or tithing or whatever it might be, those are not the kind of messages that you're going to be using in this setting. And maybe they're not good anytime, I don't know, but you just want to be very, very careful. So you want to have uplifting messages. When people go away, they say, "Man, that was a great experience. I felt closer to God. I really feel like I met God there. There were happy people. There were pleasant people. It was a good experience. I'd like to come back." Have you ever been to a restaurant and you ate and afterwards you said, "You know what? Mark this one down. We're never coming back here again." Well, I've done that. I said, that's the last time. I could give you the names of a few places right around here that I will never darken the door of again. It was either the service that I got, it took an hour to get my meal, or the food was terrible, or the waiter had a chip on his shoulder. It was mad, upset, something. It couldn't even find one when you needed one, or the prices were too high, or what. But there are some places that I'm not going to go there again. Well, there are other places I say, "Hey, put this one down. We're coming here often. We're coming here regular." And a lot of it just has to do with the overall experience. And I think we need to realize that, people need a chance to find out how wonderful we are. They don't know that right off the bat. We need to let them have some experience with this before they realize, you know what, these are wonderful people. So these are just some natural things that you need to think about. Roman numeral 3, there are other things to consider in relationship to the opening service. Excuse me. One of the things is name badges. Name badges. Now, we used to do that in our church when we were smaller. We don't do it now. But I think especially when the church is first starting out, is not very many people know anybody. And you know what it's like, when you're talking in a conversation, somebody tells you their name. We've got people from so many different cultures here that oftentimes their names are hard for somebody from another culture to fully understand or hear or know or remember. Or if you have several of them in one particular Sunday where they're all giving you their name for the first time, does anybody have this trouble, or is it just me because I'm from America? I mean, when somebody gives me their name, sometimes the next time I see them, I can't remember their name. Well, having name tags helps everybody. You can get very inexpensive name tags. You can even make up your own name tags with a little pin or something, and it doesn't cost much. We're not talking about finances here. We're talking about creativity. We're talking about putting a name tag on somebody so that you can call them by their name, start using their name. They can use their names with each other and get to know each other. But that's the first step of getting to know each other, is getting to know each other's name. And so I think it's great in those early services especially, that maybe for a few years actually, to make it a habit that everybody wears a name tag, including the pastor and everybody else. And if somebody happens to be a door greeter or an usher, they can put that on their name tag and people can kind of know what's going on there. And so I think that's a very useful tool when it comes to the church. You might even then take those name tags afterward and make up a little bit nicer ones so that when people put them on, they have a sense of pride about it. I knew one church, this worked really well for them. They didn't take attendance at their church, but everybody that came to their church regularly had a name tag that they made up for them, and they put them out every Sunday alphabetically on tables. And then when people came, they went and got their name tag, put it on. At the end of the service, the ushers had buckets, and when they left the service, they put their name tag in. And the name tags that were on the table at the end of the day, because they had multiple services that were still there were people that weren't there that day. So they knew exactly who wasn't there that day just by the use of their name tags. So that was helpful, and then they could either call through that list and find out where they were, or they'd at least know that there's a possibility for some need for attention there. So name badges. A second thing is refreshments. How many know people like to eat? But see, eating in and of itself, I know we have to do that to live, but also it's a tremendous way for people to get to know each other, to hang out with each other, to engage each other in deeper conversation than you would normally. If you just went to a service, it's over, you leave. And again, we don't have to deal with very expensive items here, but some sort of refreshment, whether it's just a drink and a bicky, or whether it's a full-on some kind of a meal, which is a little bit more difficult but could be done from time to time, to help people to kind of hang out for maybe 30 minutes or so after the service is over, so that they can not just see the back of their head when they're there or touch base with them in a very cursory way, but they can actually get to know them a little bit better. And it's good for you too as a leader to get around to the various people that have been there, because you're so busy during the service that you can't really talk to people, so it creates an opportunity for you to mingle and other people to mingle together. Another thing you might consider on the opening service or even in your regular services is some sort of a gift that you can give to visitors to take home with them. You might give them a CD or of your wonderful preaching, maybe something that has the church vision on it, maybe a church pen. Church pens are good because they're very, very cheap. You can actually get pens for quite cheap when you buy them in bulk and put your church name on it. And when somebody takes that home, they're not going to throw that pen away. It's going to have your church name on it, and every time they use it, it's going to be a little reminder to them of your church. And hopefully it will be something that will work for you even in the future. So you might give them something. Usually that would be probably in association with some sort of a visitor's packet that you put together for them that might include a pen, might include some information about the church or whatever it might be. But try to think of something creative that you can give your visitors. I know even in some churches that some of the women have got together and said, let's create these things that we give to every visitor. I remember one church I went to, the ladies loved to pick berries and make jams and jellies, and so they would make up these little jars of jelly, and they would end up giving one to all the visitors who came. And so it was just one way they could express something to visitors who came to them. Also photographs. No, don't give them a photograph of you. That's not what I mean. That's not a gift. But have somebody be taking photos of these early services in the church. You know, someday you're going to have your 10th anniversary, and someday you're going to have your 20th anniversary, and you're going to say, didn't we take any pictures back there? Nobody took any pictures. We can't find any pictures of when we first started out. Did anybody have pictures out there when we first started out? No, they don't. Well, you got time to think about that is while you're getting started. And lots of times in every church they have some person who loves their camera. they love their camera more than anything else, and they take it with them wherever they go. And so they're taking pictures all the time. And so what you can do sometimes is you can ask that person, would you be the official chronicler of the early days of this church? And just take pictures. And feel free to take pictures so that, no, not on the platform while I'm preaching. No, be discreet about it. But it'd be nice to have some pictures, and maybe even at the end of your opening service, just take a group photo of everybody that's there and make a big deal out of it. This is our opening service, and you guys are going to want to see this someday, just like they see that shot of these Microsoft guys who started the business way back when. And someday this picture is going to be treasured by all because of where this church is going. So you might do something like that, but try to take some pictures and start recording some of your journey, which I think will be helpful to you on into the future. And then recording, if there's a way to record your service, you may want to record some of the messages. Again, some of these things might be helpful to you later on when you want to celebrate certain things. But again, sometimes that's dependent upon certain types of equipment that may or may not be available to you, but you might just think about that. All right, Roman numeral 4, there are many equipment needs that you will have. I'm sure you know this. And basically what I'm going to give you is a wish list, and I know that some of these things, you're not going to have right now. But again, these are things that you can believe for over time, and even if you don't have these things right now, you can start believing for them. You can start even sometimes doing fundraising for some of these smaller things that will also add to what you're trying to do. So there are some things. And I think, of course, with any purchase, you want to do your homework on them to get the best possible value for what you're spending. Sometimes you can go to other churches that are actually upgrading and maybe changing some of the things that they're doing. Sometimes these things can be available on a used market. Other times you can make an arrangement with people that sell these things to get a discount of some sort. But here's some of the types of things that you'll want to be thinking about when it comes to starting a church. First of all is a portable public address system, a soundboard, microphone, those types of things. Not every church start needs that. I mean, if you're in a building that holds 30 to 50 people, you don't really need a sound system per se. But if you can get some sort of sound help, that's nice, especially if you are starting and you want to get a portable system that can be utilized in many different venues. Usually you're going to be, when you start a church, you're going to be in lots of different venues, and so if you can just get some sort of a portable system. Some systems are worse than having no system. Did you know that? Some people use these megaphones and other kind of things that have such terrible speakers on them that actually people would hear better if you just shut the thing off and talk to us. You understand what I'm saying? So there's no glory in having a microphone in your hand. If it's not helping, then pitch it. But if it helps, that's good. But usually it has to come to a certain size before it's absolutely necessary. But just make sure the quality is good enough that people can actually hear what's being said or understand what's being said. They can hear sounds, they hear noise, but is it distinguishable? And some of those systems are so bad. But anyway, that's one thing. Another one is a CD recorder, or maybe a computer that will record onto a hard drive, whatever it might be. But some way to record certain things. There will be some things that you will want to record. There will come a point in time where actually people will want to hear your messages again. Or if they miss a service, they're going to want to hear a message. And we need to do what we can to facilitate that if we can. And so that's another wish list item we can put out there. Another one is communion service. Somehow, if you're going to celebrate communion, you need something to do that with. And when it comes to these types of things, you can spend a lot or you can spend a little, depending upon your creativity again. I mean, you can buy these silver-looking things that are very expensive and have all the little special cups and everything that go in them. That's one way to go. There are also little tiny paper cups that you can use and different things that you can use. And you can use just regular trays and do things, but you got to have it sorted out. You got to have it figured out. What are we going to do? And I think whatever you do should be practical, it should be workable, and it should be something that, again, you have thought through and you can do consistently. So communion service, you're going to need something there. What about offering envelopes? Do you need offering envelopes? Some people just take the offering. They don't really need envelopes. Sometimes you will need them. And but again, they can be printed with your logo and all these kind of nice things on it and done professionally. Or sometimes you can just take regular envelopes that you can buy in any stationery store and then have yourself made up maybe a special rubber stamp that can actually put the name of the church and other things on it if you need to. There are a lot of creative ways you can go here, but from time to time you're going to need some special envelopes for registrations, for offerings, for other kinds of things, and so you'll need to figure out how that's going to work for you. Projection equipment. In your case, again, maybe you're not projecting songs or things on a wall or other things, but you know what I always find is that even in any situation, there are always people that are moving from one level to another. Maybe this is the way they used to do it, now they're doing it this way. They used to do it that way, now they're doing it that way. And at every level, sometimes we can come in behind and we can help and say, well, are you going to be using that anymore? Well, no. Well, maybe we can utilize that. And I think sometimes you can get, just like children can get hand-me-downs from their older brothers and sisters, sometimes we can get hand-me-downs from other churches who are ahead of us in the plan. And this is why I think it's important to be sent out from a local church, is because sometimes the local church we're sent from can help us with some of these things so that we can have them for whatever we need, even if we have to borrow them or rent them or whatever for what we need. But how are we going to keep everybody together in singing and so forth? And we might be thinking about that. Words for songs. What are we going to be using for our singing? And will we have something that's printed out that we put in people's hand? Will we be using an overhead projector? What are we going to do? And whatever that format is, we need to be prepared for that. Also, it's so critical that whenever you do project anything, that it's done tastefully and with correct spelling. How many know that's important? And nothing worse than seeing somebody's overhead that they throw up there that is just, the lines are all crooked and you can't hardly read what's said on it. Maybe the printing is so small, or the words are misspelled. It becomes a distraction, but it also tells people something about who you are. And I really believe the kingdom of God is excellent, and I believe that what we do, we should do excellently. So those are some things that you might consider. Offering plates, baskets, bags. What are you going to do to take up the offering? You will be taking an offering, right? Oh, okay. I just wanted to check. I haven't found a church yet that didn't, but I thought maybe you might be the first one that didn't take offerings. No, you need to have some sort of a way to take up those offerings, and so you want to do that in a way that demonstrates a little bit of faith. Don't pass around coffee cups. You know, you want something that has a little bit more bulk to it so that they can fill those things up, with some serious finances. Number 8 is piano, keyboard, some type of instrument. Again, this could be a wish list. Maybe that's just impossible. With keyboards now today, of course, they're very portable. But sometimes, too, if you're operating from a rented facility like a hotel or something, sometimes they do have a piano or something in there because they use them for other meetings and so forth, so you can check on that. But obviously that would be ideal if you have somebody in your church or somebody that's developing in that area. Maybe they have their own equipment they can bring in. Name tags, we already mentioned that. Platform, lighting. Now, again, you don't necessarily need a platform except when you're in a much larger setting. But if you're in a setting where people are going to have trouble seeing you, it's always good to have some. This is just one step up, but it makes all the difference in the world for people to be able to see you and make eye contact with you while you're talking. So you might just figure out some way. You might even have just a couple of portable things that you carry in and put your pulpit on it so that it takes you just a little higher. And it isn't because you're lording it over them or you want to be a big shot and 1 foot taller. No, it's so people can see and it's easy for them to engage with what's going on. Again, with a small group, it isn't quite so important, but the bigger the group gets, the more critical that becomes. Then the issue of a podium, you're going to want some sort of a thing to put your notes on, put your Bible on, put up in front and sometimes, you have people in your church that have some skills. They might make one, but again, be careful of that, because sometimes when people make them, they sort of feel like you have to keep that for the rest of the life of the church. And, they put their name on it. This was made by so-and-so. And for you to move that thing or take it someplace else, sometimes they get very possessive over that. So just make sure that when somebody does make something, you commission them to do it, number one. Number two, they understand fully this is what we're going to use for now. Later on, we may use something different. But whenever people make things, you always end up with a little bit of that. Okay, and chairs. Of course, you need some place to sit. And again, lots of times you can get these from other churches and other places where maybe they're upgrading their chairs and so forth. When we put in these new seats, we were able to bless 3 other churches with chairs. And that was great for us. It was great for them. And sometimes those things are available, but obviously people will need to sit somehow at some point during your meetings. Also, number 13 there, children's needs. There will be some children's things that you need to consider for nursery, playpens, cribs, toys, supplies, diapers, nappies, things like that, which you need to have available in your children area as much as possible, or at least a creative alternative to some of these things, so that while the children are out, if they are being cared for, they have ample things to take care of them. Obviously, we get down to 14, we're talking about computers and computer software. These things are nice to have. For many of us, they're luxuries, but as we accumulate and as we grow and as we add to, we're going to be able to get some of these things that will be helpful for us in what we're trying to do. If we do have an office set up, this may not even be a reality, but if we do, there's certain basics that we're going to need. We'll need some sort of a computer terminal, office printer, computer software maybe that might be compatible, some sort of a publishing software that will help you to make your flyers and bulletins and other kinds of things easy. There is a service called Easy Worship, which you can engage in, which is a monthly fee, but they do provide lots of songs, lead sheets, other kinds of things that might go with some of the songs that you might want to choose from and sing. And there are other kinds of things that can go along with that. One thing that I really encourage pastors to do is to get some sort of a internet access for the church so that it'll help them in their own preparation and study, but it'll also help them in many other ways to stay current and relevant. In addition, of course, then you can listen to School of Ministry if you have a computer outlet where you can continue to study, continue to grow, continue to learn through that method. All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and take our break right now, and we'll come back in our next session. We're going to talk about assimilation and follow-up issues. That is, how do we deal with making sure that people who come stay, make sure we have and then also how do we follow up on those people who come so that we can bring them back again. All right, we'll just go ahead and take a break. This is about 5 minutes. We're running about 15 minutes behind schedule, so let's just make this